Allow me not, tqpperz here. So, for starters, I apologize. It has been an extremely long time since I posted a video, and I figured the first video I'll post since having been away for as long as I have is I've recently been nominated to do the hashtag behind the games challenge thing by a user by the name of the TriForcePunk. He's a pretty cool dude. You should go check him out. And I haven't really thought that far ahead of my intro, so I'm just going to go ahead and get started. Number 1. So this one's just going to be a couple small factoids. It's not fancy stuff, just my real name is Sean Wiley. I'm 22. And right now I'm currently the project lead of all front-end training at a local grocery store. Basically, long story short, I'm a manager without all the benefits, so that kind of sucks, and I have to spend a lot of time, but oh well. Number 2, username. So I get a lot of people, tqpperz, that's kind of a weird name, where'd you get that from? It's actually a typo. When I first joined the interwebs, I was using tqpperz because I was actually a tap dancer at the time, and I went to make my Steam profile, and I didn't realize that I had hit Q instead of A when typing it up. So I went to log in after creating it. It was like, your profile is created. I was like, oh, yay, and I couldn't log in, and finally I went to see what was going on, and I found the email and said, your profile, tqpperz, has been created, and I just got to thinking about it. I was like, oh, I should probably change it, and then I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't. And the only time since then that I have found a site that tqpperz is already used is because I created a profile there and forgot the password. And so those are the only times that I operate under something not tqpperz. Number 3. So I figure I'll talk about how I got started with video games. I actually first got introduced to my first video game from my brother. He had a PlayStation, and he would play, what was it called? I think it was Bloody Roar, and it was a fighting game, and the players could actually transform into animals while they were fighting. It was actually pretty cool. My parents didn't like me playing it, but I loved playing it. And then shortly afterwards, I got introduced to Game Boys from someone who was older than me at a place called Thornhill. It was an after-school place I would go to. And he was playing on a original Game Boy, and I can't remember what he was playing, but afterwards I just had to beg my parents, and my first console that was mine, my own, my precious, was a Game Boy Color, and the first game I got for it was Pokemon Red. But the real game that first, this is number 4 by the way, is the real game that caused me to start obsessing over video games was none other than Kingdom Hearts. It seems like there's 2 people in the world, people who love Kingdom Hearts and people who haven't heard of it yet. My PlayStation 2 I actually earned on my own, but the Kingdom Hearts game was a Christmas present from my older brother. He knew that I had a PlayStation 2, and he went to buy a game for me, and the only game he could find was that he thought looked like I would get a kick out of was Kingdom Hearts, and he did pretty good. He got me hooked in gaming. So, number 5. The reason I had as much free time to submerge myself in games as I did was because from the end of 4th grade on, I was actually homeschooled. What had happened was my brother's wife was pregnant, and it looked like there were going to be some issues, but they lived in Florida, and at the time we lived in Kentucky, and I had missed a lot of school days. I was kind of sick as a kid, not like messed up sick, but like, well, kind of messed up. I had anxiety, ADHD, I had a whole bunch of issues, and so I was constantly missing school days for one reason or another, and I couldn't miss any more. So my mom went to the principal and was like, what can I do to take him down there with me for a week without messing up his attendance at school any worse? And they were like, well, you can take him out under homeschooling for a week. So she did. We went down there, and Well, of all the books and everything they gave us to cover and say to have done when we came back, we did one chapter out of one of the books. We came back and my mom was like, well, I'm going to sit in on the class to see how he's doing. She sat in for the whole class. That one chapter of the one book we had covered was actually twice as much as the rest of the class had done in that entire week. Like, it was pretty sad. And so my mom was like, well, if he's not learning anything at that school, if I can teach him better with just an occasional chapter reading, then I might as well. So she took me out under homeschooling, and I've been homeschooled ever since. My mom and dad were pretty busy with work, so it all ended up being like, here's a college-level biology book. I want you to read a chapter out of it and have a paper explaining, like, a one-page paper explaining everything in that chapter done by the time we get home. And so, that was my education. Worked out pretty good. Number 6. The reason I think it worked out as pretty good as it did was because the only IQ test that gives a number to my IQ that I have ever taken put me over 135. For baseline and average, the average intellect is considered 100. So yeah, I think Einstein's like 145 or something. Like, I'm not quite there. The reason I have to rely on unofficial IQ tests is because the only official one I have ever taken was back when I was in elementary school. And it was based on, like, it would compare the questions you answered and compare that to how many of them you got wrong. And the issue was I answered every single question correctly until they ran out of questions to ask. So there was no way to figure out what my IQ was from that test. So yeah. I was a pretty smart kid. The issue is I'm also really forgetful. So I'll learn something and I'll have forgotten it by the end of the week. So, number 7. I am actually an Eagle Scout. A lot of people don't guess that from my relaxed, laid-back attitude. But it actually, my project for Eagle Scout was really different from a lot of projects which are like, oh, they'll paint a church, or they'll build a little attachment to something, or they'll make benches for a nearby park. Mine was actually the first one anyone in the area had heard of that wasn't physical labor. It was actually sitting down at computers, and we had to create a spreadsheet, almost, for a nearby organization where they did a yearly feast for families of fallen soldiers, but all the information this organization was given was the name of the soldier and where they were born. And so my troop under my project logged over 300 hours trying to find the families of these fallen soldiers and where their current addresses were so that invites could be sent to them for this feast. And we had set it up in such a way because the organization's current setup was basically they would lose all the information the moment the feast was over. And so we set it up in such a way where they could just add to it. They didn't have to continue looking up. I think of the 120-something names they gave us, there were only 3 that we couldn't find. Number 9. Number 8. But I have it listed as number 9. I just decided to switch it and 8. Number 8, then, technically, is that I have actually worked at Disney World. I did an internship down there, part of their internship program. I worked in I can't remember if they call it MGM or Hollywood Studios. Everyone that worked there called it MGM Studios, but everyone that showed up called it Hollywood Studios. And so it's both to me. Or was it the other way around? Anyway, I worked in there. If any of you have ever been to Disney World, I worked something called the Great Movie Ride. It's basically a tram ride that goes through different rooms with animatronics that are playing out scenes from different movies. Like they'll have a animatronic doing Singing in the Rain, and then the next room will have a gangster layout, and the next room will have a western layout, and next room be the mummy, stuff like that. And I was the tour guide for that, in which I stood in front of the tram and I just kind of talked to the guests, interacted them, and did little spiels about the different movie scenes where we were riding through. While I was there, I picked up a mean Mickey Mouse voice, though. It's not going to come through very well on the audio, trust me, I've tried it before, but I can do it, and that's because his voice is on 24/7 there. And so, when you're working 8 hours a day for 8 days, and then you get a day off before another 8-hour day, and so I got his voice stuck in my head, and I learned how to do it. So, now, number 9. I know I don't post videos very often, and that comes across as procrastination. But actually, I'm only a procrastinator in my personal life. If you talk to any businesses I've worked for or anywhere like that, I'm actually one of the most active and good workers they have there. Like, I will get things done the moment it's said to be done. The only time I ever slack off is when it's not asked for by a stranger, basically. If it's asked by someone I know, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But, a little awkward to say that, my dad's in the other room. And that leads me to give you guys a little tip. If you ever see me going a couple days without a video, it's probably because I'm still playing games. I'm just not hitting record when I play them. And that's the only thing. And so just yell at me, hey, make a video, and I'll probably make a video, like, within an hour of having been told to. So, number 10. I often come across as an outgoing person. I'm pretty much friends with everyone who doesn't outright hate me. But outside of that, the only people that I actually keep in contact with is just 1 or 2 people, and even then it's just a weekly, hey, how's life text. Sometimes in some cases it's even monthly, like we never talk. The rest of the time I'm either reading books or avoiding guild invites in MMOs, or like keeping my eyes glued to the TV or my phone or something. And so I'm really only outgoing when I'm out. So that's 10 facts about me. So as I said, I'm kind of a lone wolf when it comes to games and personal life, and it's the same with my YouTube interaction, so I don't have many people to issue this challenge to, but I have 2 of them, playersomegames and roshank redemption. I challenge you guys to do this person behind the games challenge. Anyway, if you like this little video, go ahead and subscribe and like it, and if not, well, I'm sorry, I'm not the perfect person you want me to be. And with that, that's it. I'll see you guys later. Bye.